My name's Chantal Dube, and I'm a professional harpist and recording artist. I perform for special events such as weddings, VIP parties, corporate functions, and I also record for artists as well. I do some of my own recording. My big claim to fame is the fact that I was on Drake's album, Views. I'm on 3 of his songs on Views, Keep the Family Close, Child's Play, and You With Me. So check those out if you're interested. But I'm actually here today to talk to you about the harp and all about the harp and what it's made out of and just some cool facts about the harp that you may not have known. First of all, what do you call somebody who plays the harp? Well, you call them a harpist. That's right, a harpist. H-A-R-P-I-S-T. Just like you call somebody who plays the piano a pianist, you call somebody who plays the harp a harpist. So I've been playing the harp for over 25 years now, and I've been performing at special events for almost just as long. I got into performing right away for family and friends who wanted me to play at their wedding, for their wedding ceremonies. That's actually where you're most likely to see the harp, is at a wedding. So it's been lots of fun. I've been lots of places. I have done up to 70 to 80 events in a year, which is crazy because that's several a weekend, and that's every weekend. Being a musician, you definitely are going to be working evenings and weekends. I used to teach the harp as well, so that occupied my evenings. So as you can see, the harp is a pretty big instrument, but harps are actually in different sizes depending on the type of harp. And every country has their own version of a harp. So this is basically your classical harp and what it would look like. This harp is made in the USA, specifically made in the city of Chicago. Harps like this are called pedal harps because they have pedals down at the bottom, which I'm going to show you in a little bit. So this is a harp that you would see in an orchestra if you went to the orchestra. And these are the harps that are used mostly all over North America and in Europe as well. So the classic harp or the classical harp or the pedal harp, everybody calls it something different. If you're a harpist, you definitely call it a pedal harp. They're used in the orchestras and they're only made in certain parts of the world. France makes pedal harps, Japan does, as well as Italy, and this one was made in Chicago. So they can't be made just by anybody because there's over 2,000 parts in a pedal harp. There's over 10 different metals and 2 really special types of wood. So let's talk about that for a second. So first of all, the harp does not come apart in pieces like a clarinet or a flute or a recorder. So this is exactly what you see, and it's very difficult to move. I have a big cover for it that goes over it, kind of like a coat. When the harp's coat is on, it looks like a giant mitten. And then I have a SUV, or you'd need a minivan, to load the harp in, and I put the harp on a harp bed. So let's say this is the trunk of my minivan. I would lower the harp on the harp bed like this, then I would lift it up and push it in. That's how I do it. You have to seriously work out if you play this instrument because it's heavy and awkward to move. So pedal harps can weigh anywhere between 65 to 80 to 90 pounds, depending on how old they are. And this one here weighs about 65 pounds. So it's not that heavy, but it's very big and awkward. So you'll notice that this part of the harp here is kind of curvy. This is called the neck of the harp. Kind of reminds me of a giraffe's neck. So this is the neck of the harp. This here is the post. This is the body of the harp. This would be the soundboard, but there's actually holes back here where the sound comes out. And then the bottom where the pedals are is called the base of the harp. I'm gonna get the camera a little bit close up in a few minutes just to show you more of that. But let's just start from the top and work our way down. So there is 40 strings on this particular harp, but you can get more strings on bigger pedal harps. This is actually called a petite pedal harp, and there's semi-grand pedal harps and grand pedal harps. Because I'm personally not in an orchestra and I don't do orchestral work, I opted to go for the petite pedal harp because it's much easier to move around for all of the gigs, and it still has an amazing recording quality sound for the recording studio. So the strings are different lengths. The longer strings make the lower sounds. The higher strings make the higher sounds. And the strings are different colors, as you can see, and that's standard for all harps. So just like the piano keys have black and white keys, and that's standard, harp strings have colored strings. So our red strings are C's and our black strings are F's, and the strings are in the same order as the piano keys. So if you know anything about piano, the white keys are in order from A to G. A to G is the musical alphabet, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. That's the musical alphabet. So this would be C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Now, the cool thing about the harp is that I can actually get all of the keys that the piano would get. So I can get C flat, C sharp, C natural. Let me explain to you what that means. So down below here, I have a C pedal. So there's 7 pedals on the harp, 1 for each letter of the musical alphabet. So if I move my C pedal, the discs on the neck of the harp move. Now the discs are connected to the pedals up through the post of the harp. There's over 2,000 parts to this instrument. So the rods go up through the post, down through the neck, and I got C flat, C natural, and C sharp just by moving my pedal. Now the cool thing is the pedal moves all of these rotating discs on the neck of the harp. So listen to what it does to all the C's. So the harp is an extremely versatile instrument that can be played in any key. What I love about it is I can adjust my pedals according to what my key signature is. So if there's sharps or flats in a song, I can adjust my pedals before I begin and I can go ahead and play. Problem is if there's accidentals, changes in the music, I'm definitely moving my pedals around. So I'm moving my feet at the same time as I'm moving my hands. So there is advantages and disadvantages to that. So that's the cool thing though about the pedals that I personally love. And yeah, they change all the sounds of all the strings depending what pedal you push. So that was my C pedal. If I do that with my F pedal, I get the same thing and the F strings are black, as I said. So it's pretty cool. The strings are actually made out of sheep gut. A really high quality tennis racket is also made out of sheep gut, the strings on the tennis racket. The same company, in fact, that makes the harp strings also makes the strings that go through the tennis rackets. But each string is so different. Like even this string is different to this string in diameter. So they're slightly different in diameter. The lower strings are thicker, and as we get higher, the strings get thinner so that we can have a higher sound. Most harpists like to use nylon on their higher strings because they tend to break more often. Strings break when the weather changes or just because of wear and tear or just because the string's too old. I've had strings break while I've performed. Thankfully, they haven't hit me, so it hasn't hurt, but it is loud and it does sound like a gunshot. I replace my own strings. Everyone that owns a harp should know how to do that, or they have their teacher do it for them, which is kind of a pain, so I highly recommend you learning yourself. There's other YouTube videos for that. So yeah, that's kind of a little bit about the strings. And so these rotating discs, you can see them moving on the neck of the harp, and they move when I move the pedal. So I also tune the harp myself. I have a tuning key right here, and I would put it on this side and I would tune my strings. This particular string is a little bit out of tune today because it just broke a couple days ago. So it takes a few days to really stretch and hold its tune properly. A set of strings can cost you between $800 to $1,000 Canadian. You wouldn't buy an entire set of strings necessarily. You might just buy them as you need them. Or if you're an orchestral harpist, you would want to replace your strings once or twice a year. They're very expensive. So depending on the string, they can range from like $20 to $25 Canadian, all the way up to like maybe $5 or $6 Canadian. All of the harp parts come from Chicago, so you're paying US dollars for everything. So it's very expensive. Harps are also very expensive. They can range in prices, but they're a very expensive instrument, and they're also very difficult to learn how to play. Most of the string family is. Violins are very difficult to learn how to play as well. So the harp is part of the string family, and a cool thing that I should point out to you is if you watched me play the first song that I performed for you at the beginning of the video, I never used my pinky fingers. In harp, we never use our pinky fingers. They're not strong enough and they're too short for our position that we like to have. We like to have our thumb up high. Now sometimes it can seem like our pinky finger is playing because it kind of moves with our fourth finger, but we don't play with it. We also don't play with long nails or picks on the end of our finger. We have to have short nails when playing the harp because we don't want to hear our nails plucking the strings. That would sound terrible. So the song that I played for you actually at the beginning of the video is called Buzzing Bees, and I wrote that song. It's going to be featured on a new TV show that's coming out on TVO Kids. I will let you know about when that is airing. But Buzzing Bees is a fun song because it features a lot of glissandos. So glissandos are the sound that the harp is famous for making. And what I love about glissandos is that is the sound that drew me into wanting to learn how to play the harp. You hear a lot of glissandos in the Walt Disney music. And as a 12-year-old girl, I loved Walt Disney movies and princess movies. And that is exactly what drew me to play the harp. Before I started playing the harp at age 12, I started playing the piano pretty much right out of the womb, as my mom is a professional piano teacher and pianist. And so piano's a great instrument, especially good to learn how to play the piano first before the harp, because in piano you're learning how to read treble clef and bass clef, and basically treble clef are the high notes, bass clef are the low notes. And in harp, we do treble clef and bass clef as well. So you really want to know how to learn how to read music first on the piano because it's easier to play. You can use similar music to play the harp. Of course, you can't play piano music on the harp unless you're really good and you know how to arrange it for harp, which I love to do. And I love teaching people how to do. But you do need to buy specifically harp music if you're first starting out. So let's talk about what the harp is made out of. There's 10 different metals. I'll tell you what a few of them are. The rotating discs are actually gold plated so that they don't tarnish. The neck of the harp has brass on both sides. You see that? That's to keep the neck of the harp strong because there's over 2,000 pounds of pressure per square inch on this soundboard. So per square inch, there's over 2,000 pounds of pressure from these strings. So the brass on either side of the neck of the harp keeps it straight. And then the pegs that the strings are wrapped around are made out of nickel. There's lots of other metals, none of which I'm really aware of and you probably don't care about, but those are the three main ones that are the most important to be aware of. Harps actually don't gain value as they get older. They lose value, which is so heartbreaking considering how much they cost. But the problem is the harp warps. That means that it changes shape. So the strings are so tight that over time the harp warps. After a harp is about 40 years old, you need to get that harp rebuilt or buy a new harp. If a harp has a cracked soundboard, it is basically useless and nobody would want to buy that. You would never be able to sell a harp with a cracked soundboard. That would have to be rebuilt and sent back to the factory. Every single pedal harp is handmade and it usually takes about the factory 6 months to make them. You could go to the factory and choose your own harp, but you would need to call way in advance and give them some ideas as to what you want, and they would give you 2 or 3 to play, try, and choose from. And that's what I did when I bought this harp. So, what else can I tell you? let me give you a little bit of a close-up of the harp now and show you what I'm talking about. You can take a really close look at the discs on the harp. This is again the neck of the harp, and these are rotating discs, and they're actually covered in gold. They're gold plated so that they don't tarnish and wreck the strings. You'll notice that these strings down here, the lower ones, are made of wire, and the rest are made of sheep gut and nylon, but these are wire strings, and they're the lowest and thickest strings. So when I move my C pedal, you'll see the rotating discs on the red strings move. Currently, the string is last touching this peg right here. So it's gonna give me the lowest sound in this position because it's at its longest point. Now, if I move my pedal to the natural position, that top disc is now touching the string, so it basically is making the string shorter by this much. And then if I put my pedal down to sharp, C sharp, the second disc is now touching. So the shorter the string, the higher the sound. So this is why when the disc touches, the string gets higher. And you can see that all of the C string discs move simultaneously at the same time. So that's pretty cool. And there is 40 strings on the petite harp, and there is 47 strings on the grand harp. So there you have your rotating discs. Moving around back to behind the harp, I'm gonna let you have a look underneath the neck of the harp. You can see that there are 7 layers of stainless steel linkage in the neck of the harp. That's all connected to the rotating discs on the harp, and it goes down through the post connected to rods, which then connect to the pedals. All of that is put together by hand to move silently, smoothly, and accurately. We definitely don't want noise coming from our harp when we're moving pedals. You'll also see the brass plate on this side of the neck of the harp, and these are my tuning pins where I put my tuning key and turn the string to adjust it. For a lever harp, you can get sharps by lifting the lever up. So this would be your F natural, and then this would be your F sharp. So you basically only have 2 options per string, whereas on a pedal harp you have 3 options. You have your sharp, your flat, and your natural. What do you do though if you want the option of a flat on a lever harp? You tune the string that you want as a flat as a natural with the lever up. So I have my E flats and my B flats tuned and ready to go because those are the most common flats. So what I would do is I put my lever up on my E, tune it as an E natural, so this is E natural, and then when I lower my lever, this is now E flat. So when I don't need the E flat, the lever stays up, and that's how a lever harp can work for you. So this is my pedal harp and my lever harp side by side. The lever harp does not have pedals, so you have to get your accidentals, which is your sharps, your flats, by moving the lever, which I'm going to show you close up in a minute. The disadvantage of that is you have to do that sometimes while you're playing a piece, which requires your hands, same as when you play the music. The advantage of a pedal harp is that you get to move the pedals and keep your hands on the strings. The other thing I wanted to make note of is that there are such things as electric harps, which I don't have, but I wanted you to know, and you can definitely check out the Line & Healy website for more information about their factory, how harps are made, a deeper history of the harp, and you can discover what the electric harps look like on their website as well. So one of the things that the harp can do is actually create this sound using this string an octave below. So we call that in harp a harmonic. So I can play this string in a certain way where it can actually sound like the C 1 octave above it. So that's pretty neat. I did that at the end of Buzzing Bees. You may have caught that. Sometimes we can play with our fingernails just for a metallic effect, but it would just be a special sound effect. We don't play like this all the time. Another thing that is marked in music sometimes for harpists is près de la table, which is a French term meaning close to the table of the harp, so down here. If you want to hear the difference, notice even after I'm done playing the harp, the vibrations keep going. It's not like a piano where you play the string and as soon as you lift your finger off the string, the sound stops. We can dampen the harp strings, but we have to dampen all of them because the vibrations keep going through all of the strings. So I think that's what makes the harp sound so beautiful and what draws people to it. And it also is what makes the harp so healing. There's so many vibrations coming from this instrument. It's not just one note as you play it, done. So a lot of instruments, you blow into the instrument if it's a wind instrument. If you're not blowing into the instrument, it doesn't make a sound. For the piano, if you're not holding the key or holding the pedal down on the piano, it doesn't make a sound. The pedals on the harp are definitely different than the pedals on the piano because they give us our sharps and flats. Pedals on the piano do something completely different. They'll sustain the note, meaning the note, you can play it, and if you have the one sustain pedal down, it'll keep holding. But if you let go of that pedal on the piano, then vibration stops, the note ends. So with harp, you keep hearing it even though I'm not playing anything. So it's incredibly cool. And even though the harp is not a loud instrument, the sound travels so well because the vibrations just continue and continue. So that's one of the reasons why I think so many people are drawn to it and feel really good about the harp when they're around it. One of the things that I like to do is I like to volunteer as a harpist for the premature babies in the neonatal intensive care unit in Mississauga. The harp is proven to it's scientifically proven to benefit premature babies because of all the vibrations that it gives off. So I love going there and volunteering to do that, or playing for sick people or playing for sick children, depending if I know them. The harp is just so healing. If you put your hands on the soundboard, you can feel the vibrations. Sometimes my kids will lie on the floor, they'll put their feet up here and they'll just fall asleep while I practice. It's such a beautiful instrument. One of the other sound effects that we can do was glissandos like this, but then also glissandos with our nails, which is kind of a cool effect if you're trying to record some scary music for a scary part of a movie. So that's neat too. So this instrument in itself is so unique. It's capable of so much. It can play in any key. It can do all kinds of cool sound effects. This is another one. I don't know if you can hear that very well. It gives you a little bit of a whammy effect like you would get from a whammy bar on an electric guitar, if you're aware of that. My most favorite glissando to play is with all naturals except for a B sharp and an F flat, which is impossible to do on the piano. That is a beautiful glissando and definitely heard in a lot of movie soundtracks, I'm sure. So I think that's pretty much it. If you want to know the history of the harp, there's a lot of discrepancies about that, but definitely the harp is one of the oldest instruments that was ever invented besides the drum. They say that a hunter invented the harp because he had his bow and arrow and he was plucking on the string of his bow and arrow, and then he added more strings, and that is how the harp derived. And as I mentioned before, every country has their different version of a harp. You'll see small harps, harps like this in an orchestra. Most orchestras only have one harpist. Sometimes they have two, depending on the music. But some of your composers like Beethoven and Mozart didn't even write harp music. The pedal harp wasn't even invented at that time. There's a lot of French composers who wrote amazing harp music, particularly, and my favorite is Debussy, and Clair de Lune is one of my favorite harp pieces. So if you want to check out more of my videos of my performances, definitely do that. I hope you learned a lot about the harp today. And as my role as a harpist, I love recording in the studio to add harp to all kinds of different albums and soundtracks, and I love writing harp music. I love teaching the harp, and I just hope that you now enjoy the harp as much as I do and have learnt a lot. Thank you.